American political culture is drifting toward fatalism. We operate in a landscape defined by unfettered misinformation and deep social isolation, where our sense of community is being pulled apart. Most political campaigns respond to this division with transactional models. They use rigid scripts and rapid partisan sorting to identify who is already on their side, effectively ignoring anyone who doesn't immediately fit the profile. We often assume that if we just rattle off enough facts and statistics, we can persuade a conflicted voter to change their mind. But data alone rarely bridges a divide. In many cases, it makes people defensive, causing them to entrench their opposition. When we treat voters as data points to be sorted rather than neighbors to be heard, existing social fractures only deepen. This creates the very isolation and fear that authoritarian movements exploit to gain a foothold. In 2009, the LGBTQ+ rights movement faced a staggering reality, a decade resulting in 28 consecutive ballot box losses on marriage equality. Organizers realized that simply turning out their existing base was no longer enough to win. They made a tactical pivot, deciding to start talking with the people who were actively voting against them. Canvassers began knocking on the doors of opposing voters. Instead of delivering a scripted argument, they went to the door with a single experimental goal: to listen without judgment. This experiment evolved into a methodology known as deep canvassing. It suggested a different rule for political engagement. The most reliable way to change a mind is to stop trying to win an argument. Structurally, deep canvassing replaces the rapid 2-minute transactional survey with a prolonged 10 to 15-minute dialogue. The framework begins with non-judgmental listening, using a cone of curiosity to invite the voter to share their conflicted thoughts. Next, the canvasser shares a story of self, a personal experience illustrating how policy impacts real lives, moving away from abstract talking points. This vulnerability creates a bridge to Phase 3, empathic perspective taking. By sharing their own story, the canvasser encourages the voter to connect their own life struggles and family values to the policy under discussion. In the final phase, the canvasser helps the voter process their internal conflicts. They guide them through their underlying prejudices, moving toward more inclusive, equitable solutions. This specific sequence is designed to bypass defensive tribalism and access shared human experiences that the traditional model often ignores. To see this in practice, we can look at the rural mining town of Trail, British Columbia, where the climate debate was deeply polarized. Data from the pilot program run by Neighbors United shows that after these prolonged conversations, 1 in 3 small-town residents shifted their behaviors to actively support clean energy and climate action. The method also addressed immigration conflicts in Chicago, where thousands of newly arrived asylum seekers were being housed in long disinvested neighborhoods. Canvassers used deep listening to bridge the gap. By slowing down the conversation, residents began connecting their own family histories, like the Great Migration, to the journeys of the new asylum seekers. These outcomes suggest that human connection built on shared vulnerabilities can transcend geographic and ideological divides that transactional politics cannot reach. Academic research from UC Berkeley and Yale has attempted to measure the durability of these shifts, treating deep canvassing as a measurable science. In one voting rights experiment, support for universal mail-in voting increased by 4.2 percentage points, remaining elevated 10 weeks later. The study also tracked a 1.9-point drop in the belief that mail-in voting leads to fraud, inoculating voters against conspiracy theories. This data suggests that structured empathy can create long-lasting ideological shifts rather than the temporary compliance seen in traditional outreach. While these conversations are designed to change the voter, they often end up changing the canvasser as well. Volunteers who conduct these conversations frequently report a decrease in personal anxiety and an increase in curiosity about people with dissenting views. On a macro level, this individual shift counters the societal isolation and fear that authoritarian forces rely on to advance. Choosing to listen to someone we've been told to fear doesn't just change a single vote. It denies authoritarianism the isolation it needs to thrive, one conversation at a time.